Hi everybody. In this video I would like to share with you a couple of decks which I obtained through trade. So this is the Moroccan Fez, so I'm going to put this aside for now. Let's start with the Morgan-Greer. This Morgan-Greer I think potentially could be the first edition, I don't know. The copyright says 1979, so that just simply means I really quite like this card. I've shuffled this, and if you followed me for a while you would know that I'm very reluctant to put my decks back in sequence because I feel like I am resetting the deck, like I've undone all the shuffling that I've done, and I don't know why. For some reason I feel a bit uncomfortable about that. So we all know the Morgan-Greer. I first saw this on someone's channel, and then 4 years ago when I first started learning tarot, and it's always been in the back of my mind, but I've never bought it for some reason. And in the back of my mind I knew, although perhaps not so consciously, that I wanted one which was published by its original publisher. I become quite enamored by the idea of collecting decks which were published by its original publisher. In this case, the Morgan-Greer is by Morgan, the Rider-Waite-Smith is by Rider, etc. I think that a publisher, the first publisher to publish a deck, deserve to be acknowledged, because in my mind they are the people who trust, who had faith, and who was willing to put their money into the project, which then allow the rest of us to enjoy the birth of the deck. Because without the publisher, you know, the publisher, it's like that birth canal. So that's by Morgan and Morgan. I suspect I could potentially have the first edition, but I don't know. And I have Shane to thank, because he was the one who found this on eBay. I never really seem to have such luck. So I purchased this from Shane, and this is like a fold out paper, so it's not a booklet, it's kind of like so. So anybody who have a bit more knowledge about Morgan Press or Morgan and Morgan, please feel free to enlighten us down below. So the back's a bit faded, and I think it's due to time, age, sunlight, and wear. So there's visible signs of wear, but it's in a relatively respectable condition. So I'm really glad that my first Morgan-Greer Tarot is by Morgan and Morgan, or Morgan Press. Let me have a look. What is it? Morgan and Morgan Incorporated, and the copyright is Morgan Press Incorporated, Dobbs Ferry, New York. So these are the same people who allow us to have the who made it possible for us to have the Aquarian Tarot, which I know is quite an important deck in the so-called well, I term this for myself, I term it the second wave of tarot after the Golden Dawn in the 70s. I think the Aquarian played a huge part in that. Second is the Moroccan Fez. The Moroccan Fez is a deck that I have heard a lot about ever since I started tarot 4 years ago, and I never quite understand why so. All I know is that I've avoided it for a while, because although I really love the artwork, not so much the artwork, sorry, the aesthetic I should say. The aesthetic is very 1920s, 1930s. It's very post-nouveau, how should I put it? Post-Edwardian, kind of that era, just after the war, when And then of course the Second War hit, and you know, it's that, I don't know, I feel quite nostalgic about the first half of the 20th century, and if I believe in reincarnation, I would have probably thought that I was alive in the early part of the 1900s as well as the 1950s, because I have this uncontrollable sense of nostalgia about the early 1900s and the 1950s, which I found hard to explain. Because of my current spiritual belief, I do not believe I will be reincarnated after this, but that's a whole other video. So the reason why I sort of avoided this, even though I like the aesthetic, is because, judging from the name, the Moroccan Fez Tarot, I think that's what it's called, because the box is gone. I know there's the orange box and the black box. That's all I know about this deck. There is that, you know, that origin thesis of the tarot where people gather at Fez in Morocco. And this is the line that Paul Foster Case, who then took tarot to San Francisco, I believe, in the 70s. And therefore, in my mind, this is not a historical term, it's just my own term, he is an important part of that second wave of tarot after the Golden Dawn. After the sort of pre-Golden Dawn culminated in the Golden Dawn, that French occultists culminated in the Golden Dawn, and I see the 70s as like this second wave of tarot, and I feel like now we are in the third wave of tarot. Anyway, topic for another video. So because of the name, I feel that the thesis of the origin of tarot, which is the secret code, it originated in an ancient civilization in Egypt and rediscovered in Fez, permeates, or potentially would permeate this deck. And so I thought, well, I can't really, because it's not quite my belief. I don't subscribe to that thesis, and I wasn't sure if I really want to be looking at images which insist on such an origin story of tarot that I don't believe in. But after 4 years of constantly bumping into these images, and the deck is a little, so the bottom part is shrinking at a faster rate than the top lamination, so that happens with the decks. I don't riffle shuffle, so it doesn't really matter. And also the prices tend to be a little crazy, to say the least, and I didn't like it, or I didn't want it. I like it a lot, but I didn't want it that badly. So when I saw this was out for trade and I have something to offer, I thought that's probably time. It's probably took it as a sign, and I thought, why not? The cardstock's really nice and waxy. It has that really waxy feel of the early 1970s cardstock of the Rider-Waite-Smith, but not as thick. And I can't remember if this is by US Games, potentially. If this is by US Games in the early 70s, it is potentially printed in Switzerland. And if it is in Switzerland, it is potentially by AGM, or back then AG Mueller, or Mueller and C. I think Mueller and C simply means Mueller and Company. So it has that papery, waxy feel. It's quite nice. So it's through and through Rider-Waite-Smith. The images not describe, but depict things which suggest they are set in the Middle Ages, judging from the robes and such. But the aesthetic is very 1930s, 1920s. It reminds me very much of older books, of old vintage books from that period. The illustration of books in that period is very much like this very black and white pencil on paper, pencil drawn, watercolored it has that feel. Limited color palette, as you can see, very primary colors. I love quite the back, but it don't believe it offers anything new with regards to Morgan-Greer is still in print currently. They're being published by US Games. I'm not quite sure what happened to Morgan & Morgan or Morgan Press. So I haven't flipped through the whole thing because you could see the cards and the deck everywhere. This one, on the other hand, is still in order because I haven't shuffled it. I'm not likely to shuffle it anytime soon. I have a few other decks I seem to be reaching out for more these days, when I do, which is not often at all. But I know this is going to be staying with me until I'm ready for it. I don't know when that's going to be. So I'm flipping through the whole deck here because this is not seen as often as the Morgan-Greer. I think if you can get this for about $100, might not be mint, might not be perfect. I'm not sure, depending. The making of this video, at the time of the making of this video, $100 is considered okay. I know some have asked and paid for about $300 for this. I personally would not pay that much myself. But today is July 2016, so market changes all the time. So who knows? But I'll talk to you guys later.